happy you're here once again. This is our Aviation Marketing Masterclass, our free session on branding. So this webinar is for you if you are the owner, marketing manager, or brand manager for an aviation company. If you are a salesperson or sales manager wondering if branding can help you attract more leads or convert them to sales more easily, one person that it is not for is probably if you are a graphic designer, or even if you are a marketing professional, you might find this a little beneath your level of knowledge. This is really designed for aviation professionals who wear many hats, one of which is marketing. So if your job is branding and you do this all day, every day for your clients and things like that, you may find this a little bit old hat. But just so that we set this up correctly and you know what you're expecting, we should have a fabulous time. All right, so please do two things. The first thing is to make sure that you have a pen. We do have handouts on this webinar, so you can print those out and take notes. There will be several places during the webinar where we're going to be taking questions from the studio audience. And so if you have questions, you can just scribble those down. Or just type them into the chat window. So
actually, it won't be from the studio audience because this is the studio and we don't have eyes.
That's true. All right, from the webinar audience, so go ahead and type those into the chat window at any time, but we'll probably be answering those on those question slides. And the other thing is to please make sure that your cell phone is turned off and all your other windows are closed. Multitasking is highly overrated. We've read a lot of studies about that. And so, when you really focus in on something and really get your hour's worth out of this webinar, I think you're going to find that it is very, very helpful. Okay, so I did promise you the brand design brief template, and you'll have that in your inbox before the end of the day. I didn't want to distribute that during the session or before the session because of what we just said about multitasking. And I know as soon as you get that design brief template, you're going to want to run off and start writing things down and screen capturing things and everything else. And I don't want you doing that while we're talking today. So forgive my tardiness with that, but it will be in your inbox before the end of the day. And if you could devote your attention to this webinar, I promise this is going to be the best possible hour for you. The other person this webinar is not for is if you want everything to be easy and done for you. That is not going to happen. So branding is hard work, and there is no way to just outsource or purchase a brand. It is something that really needs to be participated in by everyone in the company, particularly by the sales and marketing people. All right, that said, here's what we'll cover today. What is a brand? Great brands are earned, not bought. Your core story, a design brief and what goes into it, your brand and prospecting in your phase 1 scenario, your brand and closing sales in your phase 2 scenario, and your brand and customer service in your phase 3 scenario. And go ahead and type anything you like into the chat window, any responses. If you feel that this is not loud enough, not soft enough, too much detail, not enough detail, we love to hear those kinds of comments. And John is facilitating all of those wonderful things and typing while I'm talking. So that is a fabulous thing. All right, so the outcomes we're expecting. If you do this right, you will have a brand that is recognizable and respected by the people that matter most to you. Okay, none of us want to be Coca-Cola. None of us want to be Harley-Davidson. This is an aviation workshop, so we're not shooting for mass market retail here. We are shooting for your specific target audience. You'll start relationships with a positive credibility bank account, meaning that people who have heard of you will have good feelings about your brand or your company already when you first get on the phone with them or when you first shake their hand at a trade show. And you'll be the standard against which your competitors compare yourselves. You become the benchmark and the one that everyone's trying to beat. So that's a good thing and a bad thing. Even without spending more on advertising. There is nothing that we're going to do in today's workshop that is going to necessarily cause you to spend money, except for we're going to have an offer at the very end If you are not a member of our masterclass, we're going to potentially invite you if it seems like a good fit for you. But everything else that we're talking about today doesn't require you to spend a dime to get really good responses. Of course, you may decide to hire a designer or other kinds of things, but that's up to you. So I'm Paula Williams.
And the other picture there would be John Williams. That's me.
And we are ABCI, and ABCI's mission is
to help all you folks out there sell more products and services in the aviation world.
Right. Okay. So first of all, we're going to start with our story in aviation. Of course, John and I both came from different places in the industry. I came from finance. John came from high tech, and some other portions of industry. And so we thought, we've got an incredible combination here. This was probably overstating the case or being overly optimistic, but we thought with Fortune 50 marketing skills, with high-tech tools and techniques, with an aviation vocabulary and experience. John's been flying since he was, 8 years old?
9, actually.
9 years old. So, how could this possibly go wrong, right?
Right.
Exactly. All we needed to do was get into the aviation industry, let people know who we were, and everything would be great, right?
Of course.
No, that is not what happened. The problem is that in the aviation industry in particular, we have a very hard row to hoe. We have a very gated community, a very niche-y community, and cliquey community where everybody knows each other. We had no experience, we had no track record, we have no samples that we could show that were relevant to the aviation industry. They could look at our Wells Fargo stuff and say, that doesn't apply to me. They could look at John's high tech stuff and say, that doesn't apply to me. So our brand was basically worthless. We had crickets. We had nothing. So unfortunately, things didn't work out quite the way we had planned. So what a brand is really is what comes to mind for your target prospect when someone asks him about your company. If he doesn't know it or doesn't recognize it or doesn't have an opinion, then you don't have a brand, right? At least with that person. Maybe with the next person you talk to, maybe you do have a brand.
Well, only if they do the things you say, if they recognize it, of course.
Exactly.
So
with a prospect that we'd never talked with before, he didn't recognize our logo, he didn't recognize our name, it meant nothing to him. So we had no brand. So you can have all of the elements of a brand, including a great name, a logo, a website, fonts, colors, all that stuff, and still not have a brand unless someone actually recognizes and has an association with that brand. And that's sometimes called brand awareness. That is sometimes called brand recognition. Thank you for the comment, Philip. That's Philippe. I'm sorry. I probably just massacred your name. And it is really, really important that you put some furniture in this house. A house is not a home until it's lived in. A design scheme is not a brand until it has credibility with the people that matter. So you can go to a designer and you can purchase an entire brand package, with everything, and it can be fabulous and everything can be right with that, and it is still not what we would call a brand because it doesn't have any credibility, any stories associated with it, anything along those lines. All right, so questions so far?
As a matter of fact, there are.
Oh, good.
So Philippe says, what's the difference between brand awareness and brand recognition?
I would say that they are probably the same thing for the purpose of this discussion. And Philippe, I know you are a marketing professional, so you're going to make some distinctions. But for the purpose of this particular audience, John, tell me if you disagree, but I don't know that that's important for this discussion.
Well, probably not too important, but...
Are people aware of your brand? What we're looking for here is if somebody gets an email from you, are they going to recognize that that is from you? Are they going to recognize that that's from your company? And you could call that either brand awareness or brand recognition. So I think on that level, it's probably the same thing. All right. Yeah. Let me know if you disagree. There's another question from Frank.
How long does it take for a brand to work?
How long does it take for a brand to work? A brand might start to work the second time someone sees it, right? So if they see it for the second time and they recognize it and they have some positive association with it or some negative association with it, your brand is working. You have a reputation already with that person, even on the second meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and that kind of feeds into that first thing, brand awareness and brand recognition. I don't know that we want to get too hung up on that for now, but that is, I think, a pretty good response. The older your brand, of course, the better. The more associations you have with it, the less likely you're going to screw it up if you ever happen to make a mistake. So if you have positive association and then a negative association, your brand is a little more durable. If it is the second time they see you, your brand is not very durable, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. All right, so go ahead and type into the chat window if you recognize any of these brands.
You keep saying chat window.
Yep, message window.
There's a question window.
Question window or message window, either way.
Because the question one is the one I'm looking at.
Okay, cool. So we have Atlantic. Atlantic is an FBO chain in the northern United States. Gulfstream, of course, a luxury brand for aircraft manufacturing. Piper is a more recreational or practical or general aviation brand in the United States in aircraft manufacturing. King Schools. A lot of people have a lot of association with this one because this is often people's first association in aviation because this is how they learn to fly, and a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for King Schools. It's been around for a really long time. John and Martha King are a really great brand ambassadors and so on. Sporty's Pilot Shop. John, you've known about Sporty's forever, right?
Well, not about forever, but they certainly have a lot of different things and pilot supplies and things that are kind of nice.
Okay. Hartzell Propellers.
Yeah, they've been around probably shortly after the first airplane here, and I don't remember when they started, but
probably the oldest.
Hartzell and Macaulay, those both have been around forever.
Those are probably the oldest brands on this page, right?
Maybe Piper is older.
Really? Wow.
Well,
okay.
The particular logo may not be, but Piper itself.
Yeah, exactly. And you do carry over, even if you redesign your brand, some of that reputation, and that's often the intention when you redesign a brand. So the brand on the lower right-hand side, does anybody recognize that one? That's what I'm actually the most interested in.
Not the Aviation Marketing Masterclass logo, but
the one right above it, exactly.
See, he says no.
No, we're getting a lot of no's. Okay,
that doesn't surprise us.
Exactly. And the reason is because you probably have some association with every other brand on this page, right? But that last one is a brand new brand that we just started in January of this year. And there are probably maybe 20 people that know about it and have had any kind of association with it. And is that because it is a better design or a worse design than any of the rest of these logos?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Is it because it has different colors than any of the rest of these designs?
No.
Okay. Is it because it uses different fonts than the rest of the designs?
Just answer the question.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at here is that people get really, really hung up on the design of the logo and the design of your brand and the colors that you use, the fonts that you use, and all of that. And before we get into those design elements, I just want to tell you that it is better to have fabulous consistency with a horrible design than it is to have no consistency with a fabulous design. Make sense?
Absolutely. Consistency is the basis.
Right. So don't get hung up if you aren't perfectly happy with your design. Don't worry about it yet. So the things that we need to worry about first are pattern recognition, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about Qatar Aviation. They're an FBO in the Southwest United States. If every association that we have with Qatar, and it has been great service and friendly people, great service and friendly people. Every time we go in, we get great service and friendly people. So if that happens a number of times, then what's our expectation going to be next time we walk into or next time we see that Qatar Aviation logo?
Great service and friendly people.
Exactly, right. And
which is their intent.
That is their intent. And the other thing that goes along with that is what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So if we go in expecting great service and friendly people, then we're going to be friendly when we walk in the door. And because that's what we're expecting to see, we're going to be using a filter for our experience that sees what we want to see. And so it helps them actually become friendlier and have better service because their people get treated as if that's the expectation all the time. So, that consistency really builds on itself in a positive or a negative way.
Yes, and we're getting comments that say, yes, consistency is the most difficult thing for a client to understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Philippe and Sandra and Mike, yeah, I'm really glad you're with us here. Okay, so what happens when you're inconsistent? This is a Dilbert cartoon. We love Dilbert. So if you have two conflicting pieces of data, what happens? There's a
it's
theory
called cognitive dissonance.
Called cognitive dissonance. And the one that is usually the one that is not in our favor is the one that takes over. So if your numbers are correct, in case you're hearing this and not reading it, the first frame, Dilbert's boss says, if your numbers are correct, my strategic plan is irrational. In the second plan, cognitive dissonance takes over. Spoink! And Dilbert's boss says, you sure are bad with numbers. And Dilbert says, what was that noise? What that noise was cognitive dissonance taking place. And, Dilbert's boss has two conflicting pieces of data. He's going to go with the most negative one. So that's another reason that we really have to focus on that consistency. And this is the most important thing. If there was one thing that you can leave this webinar today with, you can leave now. I'm just kidding. We really do want you to stick around. But whatever you do it consistently.
Oh, is that cognitive dissonance? You could leave now.
Yeah, that was cognitive dissonance. I thought I'd give you an example. So great brand managers are nitpicking control freaks. So today is Nitpicking Control Freak Appreciation Day.
Great.
So if you have a nitpicking control freak in your organization, make them your brand manager or your brand officer. If you do not have a nitpicking control freak in your organization, get one or hire John.
Hey, watch it.
No, he actually is our brand manager and he does an outstanding job with that. So we really like that. So what are some of the things that you could make consistent? They don't have to be big things. They don't have to be fabulous things, and you don't have to be consistent on everything. That's not possible. So you want to think about what are some things that would be easy for you to do that would differentiate you from your competitors? Is there a unique service element or a unique process or a unique product that you could do differently? If you've ever flown on any Virgin airline, you will notice that on almost every other airline, the hostesses, the air hostesses, or the flight attendants are wearing flat shoes. But on the Virgin lines, they are wearing shoes like these.
I assume you mean the female flight attendants.
The female flight attendants, exactly. That's true. These are $475 heels that I absolutely love. I want a pair, but I'm not a flight attendant, so I don't know if I can get hold of them. But I'm told they're really comfortable, which is an oxymoron for red patent leather heels. But that is something that is different about Virgin Airlines, and it is very consistent among the Virgin Airlines. You might argue, well, people love surprises.
Not really.
No, they don't. They like to have their expectations met, and sometimes they like to have their expectations exceeded, and they want those surprises to fall within certain parameters. And especially in aviation, we really don't like surprises.
Unless our expectations are exceeded.
Exactly.
That's a good surprise.
So people value consistency far above and beyond surprises. So testimonials are another thing that really become part of your brand. If people are saying consistent things about you, that are consistent with other people's experience. If they see a lot of testimonials on your website where people are agreeing, saying, yes, these guys have really fabulous service, or yes, we've noticed that these guys have a specific way of doing things, and we really like that. Those things become part of your brand. Messages and advertisements become part of your brand, but only, again, if they're consistent with actual experience. So, this vintage ad with fabulous food on an airline is probably not consistent with most of our experience with airline food, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. So this would be irony or humor. This is not really helping the airline's brand because it's going to be inconsistent with the bag of peanuts that you're probably going to get, right?
Yes, unless you're flying some overseas airlines.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So questions about what a brand is, questions or comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. There's one question. Is there a good hashtag for promoting you on Twitter? I'm going to suggest right here, I hate to plug a book, but I'm going to plug a book. We have a social media guide for 2016 for aviation professionals. It is on Amazon, and I'll also send you in the notes for this episode. I'm also going to send you a link to that on Amazon, and it has the most popular hashtags for this year for the aviation industry. I'm not going to get into that today because it's very different depending on whether you're in maintenance or airlines or charter or whatever. Okay, so yeah, testimonials are a fantastic way to build your brand story. Thank you for that comment as well.
And then, isn't design important?
Yes, design is important, but we're going to argue for the purpose of today's discussion that you're going to have to work with what you have. So a lot of us already have brands. In fact, if you could raise your hand, if your company already has a brand, you're not a startup that's looking to establish a brand. If you already have anything, any kind of logo, name, something to start with. Okay, it looks like most of us have something to start with. Nobody's starting from scratch. So I would suggest that the priority is to work with what you have and establish some consistency around the design elements that you have. Okay?
Okay, are there any standard meanings of colors?
Yes and no. We did this webinar about 5 years ago, and we spent several slides on color. The problem that we have with establishing a standard association with color is, one, aviation has gotten a lot more international, and two, over the past 5 years, brands have been focusing on breaking the rules associated with brands. So the rules are almost irrelevant at this point. The most important thing is what colors are your competitors using. You want to make sure that you are very easy to differentiate from your competitors. So I would not use a color that your competitors are using if you can stay away from it. Otherwise, I don't know that there are any verboten or otherwise rules for colors that are hard and fast.
Meanings of symbols. I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, yes, there are some pretty consistent meanings for symbols. You always want to end on an upswing if you're using graphic elements and other kinds of things, because that makes people think positively and so on. That's not a topic that we can go into a lot of depth here. We are not, what is the guy's name on Angels and Demons where he was the symbologist? Professor Langdon. We're not Professor Langdon. We're not going to get into a lecture on the meanings of symbols here. But there is lots of literature about that your designer or that we could help you with if you'd like. Okay.
It's a little long, but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It says the worst nightmare for me was the IT part of my branding, web development. Do you have any idea how to deal with these people? Or at least find ones who actually deliver what they promised?
Okay. We have almost never had good luck finding a professional that will do a really good job with technology and with branding both. ABCI, our company, will actually use two separate teams of people to do information technology and to do branding. And then we do the project management to bring that together for you. We have never found anybody that we could work with that is really good at both.
No.
So yeah.
I mean, IT people think the computer's got the name, their name, or the name of your company written on it, and they don't care about consumers.
Right.
And the branding people don't care about that.
So, don't care about how things work. So the two have to come together at some point, but they don't have to be the same person. So very sad. And I really feel for people who are in the situation where they've had a brand established by their information technology people. I just wish you the best, and just take it from there. Whatever you can do, please wrest the control of your design from the IT people if you possibly can. Okay, so people are pattern recognition machines. If you are in a strange place, or in a strange situation, and almost all of us are in strange situations just about all of the time, but this is a street in Singapore. And if you are hungry and thirsty and you don't know anything else, and you're afraid to drink the water because you think it may have bacteria that your body is not used to, and so on, you're going to be really relieved to see this sign, right, John?
Yes.
Okay, so Coca-Cola is like the most internationally recognized brand. And there is a very good reason for that. We're not shooting for that level of recognition, but we can use the same principles of pattern recognition, even if this didn't have Coca-Cola spelled out. You'd be able to see from the symbols, from the fonts, from the colors, all of those things, what this is, and you'd be able to see, wow, I can probably find something that I can eat or drink on this street. All right, so now let's get into the design brief. How can we harness that pattern recognition using visual elements, verbal elements, and customer experience elements? And before the end of the day today, you're going to be getting a template in Microsoft Word that you can fill in with your information that is a design brief.
That's if they download the handout.
No, it's not the handout.
Oh, you're going to send it
after the fact. Yep,
okay.
We don't want people multitasking. So that will be sent to you before the end of the day. So let's talk about visual elements first. This is what people usually think of when they think of branding, but it's only a very small part of branding. So your logo, symbols or devices, colors or set of colors, and fonts. Now, most of us have one or more of these things set up already in our companies, but some of us may be missing some of these elements. So it's good to think them through. So when we think about, the visual symbols, we think about the company logo and visuals like signs, banners, novelties, and so on. We can also think about those same visual symbols, except that they're specific to a product. So, let's say we're talking about Cessna. Cessna would have a company logo and visuals, but then they also have a logo for the Skyhawk, which is one of their aircraft. And they have different packaging materials, promos, and things like that for the Skyhawk, which is one of their products. You may also have personal logos and visuals. Now, if you think about some of the very recognizable people in the aviation industry, a visual comes to mind, like Richard Branson and his hair and his tan and the big smile on his face. There's never been a picture of him taken without those three things. Lynn Tilton, with her long blonde hair, she's the owner of MD Helicopters. All of these people have specific things, and she's usually, if you see her booth in a trade show, it's almost always purple. So, these are things that are very recognizable about companies, products, and people. And people ask, which should we focus on for our branding? And it depends on the purpose. If you're doing a trade show appearance to sell a particular product, then everything should be about that product, right? You want to concentrate on one thing at a time.
Sure.
And the other symbols should support it, but not overwhelm it. Okay, so colors. This is what you were expecting to learn today, right? We're actually not going to talk a whole lot about colors, but there are only two things that we really want you to consider. All of the rules about color have been broken, and very successfully by somebody in the aviation industry in the last 5 years, right? So the two things that we really want you to consider are contrast. And when I say contrast, I mean you want your your symbols and things to be very distinctive and easy to read. So you want at least two colors that contrast with one another. And the other thing that you want is precision. And John is really fantastic about this. We get something back from the printer that is not precise in its colors, he will send it back. We have some printed swatches that we use to press check our printed items. If they don't match, we send them back. If you know what your colors are and you have the Pantone numbers, the hex colors, and all of those things, you really need to get the matching codes for all of those colors. And there are some places that you can go to get those. I'm going to be sending those in the notes today. WebMonkey is one, for the online colors. Pantone is another for the printed colors. But you want to make sure that those match and that you're using that precision, because again, we're looking at pattern recognition. And if people don't see those as exactly the same color, you're not establishing a pattern. You lose all of that consistency, right?
Yep.
Okay. Fonts. We usually recommend that people choose two fonts. One that would be a very distinctive font, and the other that would be a very comfortable and traditional font, or a very normal font that's easy to read. So, some of the impact fonts or some of the high impact fonts that you might use would be things like this, depending on the mood that you're trying to set. So when I say a font has a mood, do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
No.
It might provoke one, but.
Right. A font provokes a mood. There we go. Different fonts use different visual cues to try to evoke a particular emotional response in people. So, and usually the font name will give you some kind of a clue for that. So Braggadocio, that's an attention-getting font. That's something that you might see on a Art Deco movie poster or something like that. So the more you know about art, the more you know about this. The less you know about art, the less you care, right? So you can leave this to your designer, but do understand that you want to have one distinctive font that you use all the time in your marketing and advertising, and then one less distinctive font that's more comfortable to read and that really kind of fits together.
Let's just not say about all the time, because if you put everything in that Braggadocio font, it would be worthless.
Exactly. So you want to use that for your headlines, and then you want to use your lower key font for the text, because people will get really, really tired of reading Braggadocio. Just
wanted you to elucidate.
And that's why you choose two fonts, one that's attention-getting and one that is lower key and easy to read. All right, moving on. Questions about visual elements. So colors,
we have
fonts,
one
symbols.
sort of left over here.
Yep.
Sort of remark/question.
Okay.
I'll do the question part. Don't you think that airports and FBOs are less adventurous than airlines, private or commercial?
Yes.
Yeah, airports, mainly what they're interested in, from our experience, is a good PR plan.
Yeah, a good disaster recovery PR plan. All of the press releases and other things that they drag out in case something happens, and they want to look very credible. Their interest is consistency, dependability, safety. All of those things are the key concepts that they want to advertise. No airport wants to be known for surprises.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So there are really good reasons for that. If you are a company that does software or something that's more creative, then you want to have a more creative brand. So you think of your unique selling proposition. What makes you different from all of your competition? And what is the most important thing that your customer needs to know or believe about you for your sales to be more effective? And if it's safety, then you want your brand to be a very safe, secure, conservative, no surprises design.
So somebody types like I do.
Okay.
Can you read this?
Okay. Any rules about colors for this demographic, i.e. no pink? We kind of talked about this before, but I see where you're going, where you're coming from about the no pink. For a long time, aviation still is a very male-dominated field. So if we look at the demographics of the aviation industry, it is more male than the rest of the population. It is more former military than the rest of the population. It is more over 35 than the rest of the population. more traditional than the rest of the population. So all of those things add up to a fairly conservative audience. That said, I know of a couple of companies that have used pink. There's Peach Airlines in Japan. Pink means something very different, I think, in the Oriental part of the world than it does in the Western part of the world.
You're ahead of me.
Okay, and the other thing is that pink was used quite a bit in the breast cancer awareness, Susan J. Komen Foundation, that was really popular in the United States a year or two ago. Southwest and some of the other airlines used pink uniforms and other kinds of things, and a lot of pink promotions. They even painted airplanes pink for that promotion, I think. Okay, so pink is not off limits, but you do want to make sure that you're using it for a reason. What are you trying to communicate? So rules are meant to be broken, but you need to know why you're breaking them, right?
Why, when, and what the possible ramifications will be.
Absolutely. Okay, so carrying on. Thank you for your questions and comments. That makes it 1,000 times more fun for us. So verbal elements, taglines and slogans, names of products and components, and ways of explaining key concepts. Now, once again, we're looking for consistency here, and all of these things are not often thought of when you think of branding. Most people stop with the visual elements, but these are, I'm going to say, just as important or possibly even more important to get these right. So taglines and slogans, and here's some examples. ABCI, we help aviation companies sell their products and services. We say that every single podcast we do, every single webinar we do. We want people to be very clear about what we do. Vlog, streamlining maintenance and protecting aircraft value. They're a software company that handles aircraft logbooks. SSC, or Special Services Corporation. We want to be your flight department. Once again, very clear, very simple. APG, that's Airline Pilot Gateway, your cadet to captain network. They do training and connections between flight schools, flight students, and airlines. So depending on what you do, you want to have taglines and slogans that very quickly, because you don't have time to explain, to take 30 minutes to explain to someone what your company does. They have, just a split second to figure out what you do and if you're going to be relevant to them. And if you don't communicate that clearly, they're not going to have the patience for you, right? You'll never get the chance to find out. All right, names of products and services. Aviation Marketing Masterclass. That's pretty clear. That's what that is. And we are, once again, nitpicking control freaks about the way these names are used. It is not the Aviation Masterclass. It is not the Masterclass or the Master's Class. It is not, any of those things. Whenever we see that done wrong, if we have a writer or somebody else that messes that up, we put it back together again. It can be Aviation Marketing Masterclass the first time somebody mentions it. The second time it can be Masterclass as a shortened version. Any other form of that name is not okay, right?
Yep, and if you think she's bad about this, you should talk to Wells Fargo on what they do.
Absolutely. That's where we got this. You really do need to be a nitpicking control freak, because consistency is key here. Personal branding flight plan. That is a product that we have. The podcasting co-pilot is our podcast, or a product that we have where we provide assistance to people that want to put together a podcast. We also have a podcasting concierge service where we do everything for them. All they do is speak. And we take their audio files, we produce them, we do all of the technology and everything else to broadcast publish a podcast for them. ABCI's famous checklist service. That came from a customer who said, I am expecting one of ABCI's famous checklists with this, right? I love that. So we picked it up and we use it. What can you say about your service that is famous or that you want to become famous? Figure that out and make a name for it. Aircraft digital logbook, that is Vlog's product. It is not the aircraft virtual logbook. It is not the cloud logbook. It's not anything else. It is an aircraft digital logbook. Airline Career Mentor. That is a thing that you get when you sign up with APG. You get an airline career mentor who helps you figure out what you want to do with yourself in your airline career.
They stay with you all the way through until you become an airline person.
Absolutely. So names of products and services, again, you can do that magic trick with consistency to make that happen. Ways of explaining key concepts. What can you compare your product or service to? Vlog does for aircraft logbooks what QuickBooks does for accounting. That explains it pretty well, even to somebody who doesn't really understand the product. They kind of get, okay, well, I know what QuickBooks is, so I feel like I know more about what this product is. We bring the traditionally planning discipline and checklist of aviation to marketing. Dry leasing an aircraft is kind of like leasing a car. That's a statement that's used by Dallas Jet when they talk about dry leasing. And of course, that has a lot of caveats behind it. But people who are familiar with leasing a car, but may not be familiar with leasing an aircraft, will feel a lot more comfortable with that concept. And you want to use those all the time when you talk with people so that you're giving a consistent message, and you want to make sure that all of your employees are explaining things the same way. Do you call your customers customers, or do you call them clients or members or guests? All of those things have very different meanings, don't they, John?
Yes, they do.
Absolutely. So like American Express calls their members members. We usually call our members members because they are participating in their marketing. We're not doing everything for them because they have to be part of the process in order to make this work really well. So it implies different things, and you want to make sure that you use those words consistently. Customer service elements, product and service design, telephone standards. Do you answer the phone? Where are we flying today? There's lots of ways that you can create something unique there. Your sales process, your novelties, your promotional items. One thing that I thought was really smart, there is an airline that hands out coloring sheets to kids and a set of crayons, and those are really popular even for adults right now, those coloring sheets and crayons. Sometimes the adults want them. Dress codes for your team members, the decor of your facility. John and I just did a podcast. I just recorded a podcast that'll come out in the near future about dress codes and how they affect your branding. That's not one that a lot of people want to hear, but it's very true, right?
Absolutely, it's true.
Okay. So questions about verbal branding and customer service elements and how you can be consistent with those.
Well, I think this sort of applies.
Okay, great.
Can brand values rebranding fix a scandal? As an example, a jet crashed in the south of France, had to rebrand its company, and Malaysia is investing millions in brand redesign after a couple of crashes.
That is an excellent question, and probably a little beyond the scope of what we're talking about today, but it does fit the key topic of consistency. So, let's say that UJet or Malaysian Airlines had a fantastic reputation up until an accident happened. They have good experience, tragedy. That is easier to fix than chaos, tragedy. And
sometimes it's not a matter of if you should do it, but you must do it.
Right. And sometimes it is better to completely, I'm going to say, deep six a brand, either by reforming the company. Sometimes you have to do that for legal reasons as well. But sometimes just for the branding reasons, a public relations company or a marketing company may advise an airline or an aviation company to completely dissolve a brand and start a new one.
It'll be expensive.
It will be expensive, but it can be better than overcoming the inertia of a horrible experience or a very spotty record.
All right. Here's another one along the same lines.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What can the airline do to rebuild its brand?
Okay. Yeah, that would be the same thing. Basically, any consistency in a positive direction, every interaction with a brand is building a brand, either good or bad. So if you have a negative experience with an airline where all of the rest of your experiences have been positive, that's fantastic. You can recover from that fairly quickly. Everybody knows that everybody's going to have an off day every once in a while. But if you've had a consistently horrible brand, there is no magic to changing the color, changing the name, changing the symbols, anything else that is going to overcome a bad reputation if you don't fix the problem first. So the way that you rebuild a brand, and thank you for the question, Carlos, and is to first fix the underlying problem. What is inconsistent or what is negative? If you can do that and you can explain why you fixed that. And a really good example was Southwest used to do their cattle call type of wording. Everybody hated it, right? So they quit doing that. They started doing a different kind of a business model, and they advertised their different business model. And they emphasized the other parts of the brand that everybody liked. The fact that the flight attendants are friendly and funny, and that it's a no frills but human airline. So you want to emphasize the things that are strong and de-emphasize the things that are weak. But there is no magic, no words or no symbols or anything else that you can do to fix a brand when there's an underlying horrible problem, right?
So how do you explain the difference between a weak logo but a strong brand?
Okay. We talked about how a logo is such a small part of your brand. There are many, many other things that we talked about. There are the visual elements. You've got your logo, you've got other visual symbols, you've got your fonts, your colors, and all of those things. Even if all of those visual symbols are weak, but your verbal symbols are strong, so everybody knows what NetJets is and does because it is such a unique business model. So their verbal concepts, their taglines, their slogans, their names of their products and services, people have so much experience with NetJets because they're in the news all the time. So they've established their consistency in other ways, not necessarily by using their logo. So their connection with Berkshire Hathaway, that's almost on the same line in every news story that you see NetJets owned by, a Berkshire Hathaway company. That is a branding statement. And that really helps build their brand in a way that works with their customers better than even the visual cue of their logo. They have a really good way of explaining their key concepts and making that accessible to business people who may not have ever considered a fractional jet program before. So, they haven't really even considered owning a jet. They haven't considered a fractional jet situation. Their target market are people that used to fly the airlines first class. So NetJets is a step up from that, and they've done a really good job of positioning themselves. Okay, so let's carry on. The checklist, we always have a checklist with each of our webinars. Today, we do not have a checklist, or we have a one-item checklist, and that is to complete or enforce the branding brief for your company. So you want to make sure that you download that. It'll be in your inbox. It's in Microsoft Word, and it has all of the elements that we talked about. And it's a place where you can record your colors, your taglines, your symbols, your verbal cues, and some of the things that you may not have thought about yet, like, do you roll out a red carpet whenever an airplane lands at your FBO? All of those things that you might want to think about are included in that branding brief, and you can capture them there. It's going to change, and it's not going to be perfect. No brand is ever perfect, right?
Well, Wells Fargo might think so.
Well, even they have every new person that joins Wells Fargo that has any association with sales or marketing go to a half a day or a full day of what they call brand camp, where they go through the design brief and they say, here are the logos. They've actually trademarked their colors. They've trademarked two colors. There's the red and the gold that are trademarked in Pantone, so nobody else can use those colors. They've trademarked two fonts so that nobody else can use those fonts. So they have really invested in the intellectual property of their brand. All right, so coming up next week is our members only webinar, where we will work with you on your brand. So any specific questions that you have about your logo, your taglines, your customer service elements, all of those things. We have a lot fewer people in that webinar, because it's just our members who are able to attend live, which is not all of them. So we're able to actually work on your specific projects and spend a lot more time going through those examples and helping you with your things. So logos, colors, fonts, taglines, slogans, names of products, all of the questions that you have about those kinds of things, we'll be going into those in great depth. So who learned something new today? Please go ahead and type it into the message box or the question window, either way. We really appreciate you coming. We do have a special offer that is not for everyone, right? So this is not for you if you're already a member. If you're already a member of our masterclass, then you know what that is. This is not for you if $279 a month would take food off your table. We know that sometimes happens. Cash flow is a very real thing that we've lived through as well. This is not for you if you are not willing to spend time and energy to get customers. If you think that that marketing is magic, we are not going to be able to help you. And this is also not for you if you don't play well with others. There are some folks that we have as clients who understand that they really want private consulting rather than our masterclass, and they know who they are. They would really rather just work on their own problems with us one-on-one, and that is perfectly fine. But this class is for you if you sell something in the aviation industry, if you don't have an unlimited marketing budget, or you have competitors that can outspend you. Most of us do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. If you understand that marketing is not magic, and if you're willing and able to give and take advice, try new things and adjust appropriately, right?
That's the way it is.
Yeah. When I was in martial arts, or when my son was in martial arts, he said, one of the things that they talk about is if your cup is already full, they can't pour you any more tea. You have to empty your cup before anybody can pour tea for you. So if you have an empty cup and you're willing to accept some assistance from other folks in the aviation industry, this really is for you. So this is our private group in Facebook. And the reason that we built our masterclass is because success is about what you know and about who you know. Sometimes meeting the right person at the right time can really help you save a lot of time and money and your reputation, because somebody has probably just gone through the problems that you're going through, or maybe a good connection for you as a supplier or as a partner, or for a joint marketing relationship. In fact, we've submitted some proposals for some speaking engagements that had a tech forum, because we have 4 different companies that are associated with aircraft software of some kind, or aircraft maintenance software. And customers are confused. So, the 4 of them can get together and answer questions and create a buyer's guide or a tech forum for those kinds of customers, where they're working together to provide much better marketing than any one of them could do individually, right?
Of course. Of course.
And we also don't want to reinvent hot water. That was Todd Lohenry. I think he said that. He's a guy in our class. I'm here because I don't want to reinvent hot water. People have already come up with that. And we also cover one thing at a time. Like in April, we're talking about branding, which is why we're all here today. So the outcomes of the masterclass, the things that we're expecting, are a more robust, predictable, measurable, and stable marketing system every month. So if we improve just one thing every month, by the end of the year, we come out with a much better marketing system. So if you you focus in April on improving your branding, and then you focus in May on improving the next thing that we talked about. In March, we were working on our referral systems. You also have a nice team of people that you can lean on, and people are really supportive. I've been really impressed with the quality of people in the class, right, John?
You bet.
Right.
It's actually surprising.
Yeah, exactly. And it's much less expensive than consulting. So we charge $2,000 a day plus travel and expenses when we work with companies individually. So this is 1,000 times, almost, well, it's, yeah, 1,000 times less expensive, because it's $279 a month instead of $2,000 a day. All right, so let me introduce you to some of the people that are involved with the masterclass. There's Bert Boda. He is an aviation copywriter and a retired NetJets pilot. Very friendly guy, a lot of fun to work with. He does our member highlights and facilitates our group discussions in Facebook, and tries to help everybody make the right connections and find answers to their questions. Jeff Stadola is our fighter pilot. He shoots down bad advertising.
Even ours.
Yeah, exactly. He has found a lot of problems with our advertising, and we thought it was pretty good. So he does really blunt reviews. The Navy calls these murder boards. We call them test flights because I think that's a little nicer than murder boards. So he does blunt reviews of advertising and marketing materials and things like that, and does a really good job of it. Brian Pilcher is our tech guru. Was it Farhad, I think, that was talking about how you have technical people and then you have branding people. And Brian is one of those digital citizens. He knows, he has absolutely no fear of software. He can dive in and figure out CRMs and social media and analytics and all of those things. And if you ask him a question, he almost always comes up with a fantastic answer. So that is Brian. We have our book club where we talk about a sales or marketing book. The problem with most of the books on the market is that they're talking about retail sales or marketing. Very few of them talk about specifically business to business, or even more specifically, aviation. So by having a very smart group of people that talks about each of these books every month, we get the best out of those books and highlight the things that are the most important for aviation folks, or the things that we think are the best ideas out of those books. So it's very important to stay up on the latest science and developments in sales and marketing, and we help you do that as well. John Williams, my husband and partner, he also is our MBA finance nerd, business development guy, and we do office hours together, John and I, every month with each of our members. So you can request, that's at our silver level and above, you can request an office hour with us and we work on your problems. And specifically what's going on with you and what you need help with. I focus on campaign strategy, organization, great copy and great design, other things like that. So what we included in the masterclass, we help people establish trusted relationships by interacting with other aviation marketing professionals in our Facebook group and our live webinars. You can get frank feedback on your ads, headlines, images, and projects. We have our aviation industry editorial calendar, which includes the topics and events you need to know about. That would be like trade shows, the editorial calendars for things like Aviation Week, AIN, MRO Magazine, the other magazines, so you know what they're talking about each month, so you can get more likely to get to know those reporters that you want to and be more likely to be mentioned and things like that. All right, so we also have our members-only events and webinars where we cover one key topic interactively and in more depth each month. Now, some of you might say that we didn't go into enough depth today, and that's because we don't have a whole lot of time. We want to make sure that we hit the most important points. But in our members-only webinars, we work for you guys. And you guys run that webinar. We make sure that we're covering what you want to cover and that we're solving your problems. We provide recordings and transcripts of all of our events, so you won't miss a thing no matter how busy your schedule might be. We're all in aviation, so we know what that means, right? Okay. Our book club, we send you one sales or marketing book each month and have discussions and interactions on how they apply and don't apply in the aviation industry. Like that book that we did in January, the 80-20 book by Perry Marshall. It was focused on Google AdWords for retail. But there was so much really good information in that book that did apply to aviation. We just kind of told you which chapters you could skip without wasting your time, right?
Yeah, in fact, every place that was what we can think is required reading was bookmarked.
Right, exactly. You get a 1-inch binder each year with tabs, CD pockets, and everything you need to keep your growing sales and marketing library organized. So if you forget what we talked about in January about prospecting and you suddenly need find yourself needing to have expand your list, you can go back to that topic, pull out that worksheet, and carry on from there, right?
Yep, complete with a CD that has all the files she just discussed on it.
Exactly. In the webinar that we did in January regarding prospecting. You also get tons of advice and tools from not just us, but the very smart people, smarter than us on a lot of topics in the group, on how you can get better results for less money. So these are the binders that we send out. We include bookmarks with the books so that when you get those have some key points highlighted and things like that. So how you get started is you go to abci1.com/class, and you can open that in a separate window. I know I told you not to open any other windows while we were talking, because the best use of your hour is to really learn how to effectively brand your company. But I won't be offended if you go ahead and open a window and sign up for a class at this point. So that's the order form, and it highlights the things that we just mentioned. You can keep that for your records. So it's risk-free. We have a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you get into the class and you decide this isn't for me, we don't really want to be part of this class, we'll refund you $279, and we would just as soon you not be involved if you're not a good fit, because everybody that's in there right now has been so helpful and so perfect, I think, for each other, and for, I couldn't ask for a better group. All right, so what we're going to offer now, actually for the next 15 minutes, we're going to leave this timer up, and we're going to keep answering questions on branding or on the masterclass or anything else you want to ask questions about while that timer is running. But as long as you sign up within the next 15 minutes or while that timer is running, we're going to do what we call a buddy pass. So if there is someone at your same address that wants to be part of the masterclass, we will include both of you. You both get books, you both get copies, you each get your own login, you both get invitations to all of our events, and you're both members. In fact, you both get office hours as well. So if you want to do those together or if you want to do those separately, that is fine, and we'll help you with whatever you want help with. So in some companies, that would be like your sales manager and your marketing person want to take the class together, and that's perfect, because then you're both working on your branding during the same month, and you're coming at it from different perspectives. So, two of you working on the same topic is just 1,000 times more effective. It's more than the sum of its parts, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. So that is open to you, and if you have any questions about how that works, or if you have any special requests about the buddy pass or anything, let me know. Okay, question about the joint venture between Signature and Landmark. How would you handle the challenge of rebranding? Excellent question, Philippe. I thank you for that. What we would do is we do what we call a competitive analysis between the two brands and between the other FBOs in that market. So, what are the things that are the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each of those brands, for Signature and for Landmark, and also for the other FBOs that they are competing against? What are they known for? What are their weaknesses? Have they had any scandals? Have they had anything that is a negative toward that brand? And then what we would do is we would either choose one or the other of those two brands from a marketing perspective. And this is not the legal discussion about who should buy whom. This is the branding discussion about which brand is worth more and which brand would give them the best staying power going forward. So which is the more valuable brand for their direction going forward. And depending on those two things, we may choose one or the other brands to supersede the other. And then we would do a campaign that explains the merger and explains the reason for it and explains the strengths of both and how you're getting the synergy of the economies of scale and everything else. But we would choose one of the two brands moving forward. I think a mistake that a lot of people make is to try to keep two brands. Unless they are specific to that area, and they almost always are not in the aviation industry, they will come out stronger if they combine the brands under one umbrella. So one brand's going to have to go, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, it's just confusing, right? So I think that's crazy. And so, if both brands have had some problems, or if there's a situation, and this is not the case with Signature Atlantic, but if both brands had had some problems, then this might be an opportunity to start an entirely new brand. And then you can run some campaigns about what you've changed. It's kind of like when you hang up an under new management sign if you have a terrible restaurant that you've purchased. And then you get an opportunity to get a little bit of goodwill going into the relationship, saying, give us another chance. If you tried us in the past and weren't happy, then give us another chance, because we're going to rebrand and do things differently.
It's a joint venture. This is not a combination.
Right. Exactly. But the reason for a joint venture is usually to present a united front of some kind. So same scenario, I think, for that situation.
And here's another one.
Uh-huh.
It says, our logo has a lot of audience recognition, but it's awkward in many places, being very short in height and wide left to right. Pros and cons of new logo?
Okay. Excellent question. Thank you very much, Sharon. And whenever we assign a designer to do a rebranding or to redesign a logo, we may have several versions of that logo that we use in different times and places. So it needs to be recognizable in several different versions. So you might have a horizontal logo. You may want to have a version of that may be a contraction of the name, because in a lot of cases, if there's verbiage in your logo, then you're going to need to use a contraction, or you're going to need to use something symbolic to make that more vertical or more square. But it has to be recognizable. So that would be a design problem that we would pose to a designer and say, we have to use the same fonts, we have to use the same colors, we have to use the same curves and visual elements, but we need a version of this logo that's going to fit in a vertical space or a square space. So I know that doesn't answer your question, but that tells you how we would go about the problem of making that recognizable in a different shape. Does that help? Hopefully, you can let us know if that does. I am not a designer myself. I'm very good at working with designers, but typically what I do is I frame the problem, and then we work with different designers depending on the style of a particular client. We pick one that either has a style that's similar to what they've used in the past, or if they want to make a change or an update, has a more modern style than what they've used in the past, and carry on from there. All right. Question about the masterclass. How much does it cost? It's $279 per month for 2 people if you're taking advantage of the Buddy Pass situation, and that's a silver membership that includes the mailed packages, the office hours, and all of that other stuff. So it actually is our very best deal on consulting, because even if you were just to purchase consulting separately, that would cost you more than $279 an hour. So this way you get the office hours, but then you also get the private Facebook group and the books and the recordings of all of our webinars, the invitations to our private events, and other kinds of things. So we'd like to do more in-person things. Oh, thank you for that question. Do you ever get together in person? Very, very good question, Sandra. I appreciate that. We would love to. The problem is that our customers are all over the planet. We've got folks in Australia and Egypt and Turkey. Most are in the United States. So, we try to get together with some folks just before or just after NBAA. And have a dinner or a coffee at least, depending on everybody's schedules and things like that. So far, we haven't been all that successful in getting everybody together in the same geographical location and the same time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that is rough. So
you answered the question about signature and landmark. Would you do the same thing for a couple of airlines?
For ExecJet and Lux Aviation. ExecuJet and Lux Aviation. I am not real familiar with those airlines, so I don't know their history. But we do the same thing. We do a competitive analysis of both brands, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of each brand. We might do some surveys about brand recognition in their markets and say, which of these has the stronger brand, the one with the most positive associations with it. And if there was a reason to combine those brands, again, we would take the stronger of the two and try to incorporate some of the positive attributes of the lesser known brand. So yeah, good question. And thank you for that as well. New brand, how do you do a startup? Good question with that. Actually, we just did a startup in January, and that is that Airline Pilot Gateway. If you go to airlinepilotgateway.com, you can see their website. What we need to do with a brand new brand is to establish consistency as quickly as possible with their target audience, right? So what we did for them is we put together a podcast. And what the podcast does is it makes it part of people's weekly habit. So if someone wants to become a pilot, they can listen in on that podcast every week. They are reminded about our Airline Pilot Gateway. They are exposed to the logo. They are exposed to their verbal cues about their brand. They become very familiar with the voices of the people. And that's another thing that I didn't talk about is voices become your brand. Sometimes when I get people on the phone, when I do a sales call, they say, oh, I recognize your voice from your podcast and from your webinars. So I already have some credibility, or at least they know what I'm going to say, what I'm likely to say on any particular topic because they listened to me for hours on end. And I have never met them. So, that really is a very powerful branding technique. But in this case, we have our different pilot mentors do those podcasts. So our prospects become very familiar with their voices and get very familiar with the subject matter of the kinds of things that they talk about. So they feel like they know what's going on. They feel like they know the company. They get very comfortable, and that makes it 1,000 times easier to get them to part with their money because they feel like they know this company and they know what's going on, even though it's only been in business since January. So with a startup, your first challenge is to establish some patterns and some consistency as quickly as possible, because that question that Fred asked, I think, on the first round of questions, how soon does a brand start working? And the answer is the second time they hear it, right?
Yeah, but consistency, particularly with podcasts, is something that you have got to do on a frequent and regular basis.
Right. We have a weekly podcast, and every week that we produce it, the audience grows. But we know if we ever miss a week, that audience is going to go down. So that's another element of consistency that's pretty easy to establish and pretty easy to. It's not easy to keep up, but it's simple to keep up, right?
It is after the first couple of times.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Another question about the masterclass. How much time does it take to really participate in the masterclass? What we suggest is 3 hours a week. So we have, again, consistency. We try to work in habits and we try to work in checklists. So the first thing that we do, Marketing Monday, you get an email every Monday morning that's Marketing Monday. Monday mornings is when we like to do our staff meetings and go over, what are our sales and marketing objectives for the week. So 1 hour a week on Monday, 1 hour a week on Wednesday, and we do our webinar Wednesday, which we're doing right now. And this one actually goes a little bit over time because we wanted to give you a full hour of content followed by 15 minutes of a sales opportunity if you're interested in taking advantage of that. So we wanted to make sure that we give you full value of an hour. But webinar Wednesday, that's another hour, and then follow Friday is another hour, and that's when you catch up on your sales calls, your return emails, your social media, answering questions, making sure that you're up on things, you're connecting with the people that you want to be connecting with, and so on. A lot of people can get really, really carried away with social media. So we like to kind of confine that to a specific task on Friday so that it gets done, but also so that it doesn't spread out to consume your whole life, as it were. And, some of us have to do more than that. I like to answer questions as quickly as I can if I'm available, and if I happen to be, I usually do that twice a day, where I answer emails and also answer social media questions. But Follow Friday is when we do the heavy lifting of setting up our posts for the following week, planning our editorial calendar, all of those kinds of things. So that is also a good one. Another question, what comes with the masterclass? We can go back to that. No, we can't go back to that slide. But you do have a list of things that if you go to abci1.com/class, there is a complete list on that page that will tell you everything that is on that, that's included with your membership. What I would suggest is don't worry too much about the details. You have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're inclined to get into the masterclass, go ahead and try it. You really don't have anything to lose. We'll introduce you around in the group. If it seems like a good fit, that's great. If it doesn't seem like a good fit, or if you're not getting any value out of it, then of course you can always drop down to the bronze level, or you can get out of the class entirely. So no problem with that, and that is fair game. All right, looks like we are just about out of time. So if you have other questions that I haven't answered, I apologize. I'll get back to you individually by email, and watch for an email from me that has that template, which will be a download, and it's in Microsoft Word for your branding design template. Right?
That's it.
All right. Well, have a great week, and we will see you as members, if you've joined us, next week for our members-only webinar.
You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. Hopes and dreams, every boy. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted. You know you could.